Hey, so this is a video on, it's a paragraph breakdown. So basically, it's looking at a media analysis essay, just kind of by each type of paragraph, looking at what has to go in it. So remember, at the end of the assignment, I have that list of what I'm grading on, right? That's that grading rubric, that checklist of what has to go in this. And this is what basically has to go in any kind of analysis. Of course, we're doing ads. So let's take a look. All right, so this is Mauricio's Dumb is the New Smart, and of course you can take a look at it on the media analysis page if you want to look at the text. And do remember that we are, doing this in APA format, so it should be laid out according to standard, most recent APA format. So go back and review that. Make sure that as you do your final paper, you look at it. Look at a sample, look at your paper, make sure they look the same, okay? So, here we go. In this essay, remember, and I know I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, it's that important. You're going to write a formal essay in which you analyze an ad or ads you choose and explain the advertising techniques used, as well as the myths, values, ideas, or cultural stereotypes it or they are selling, and explain the comment that makes on society, consumers, or the various groups it's targeting or portraying. Remember, you need to use quotes from at least 2 of the readings we do over the course of the essay and document them correctly. You can't use some student samples as sources, but you can also look at the media analysis webpage for other sources there, and they're all marked with an asterisk. Okay, so what do you need to do in your introduction? Well, any analysis is going to get people, any introduction gets people into the paper with the overall topic or subject, item or issue being examined. Then you've got to provide the author or title. And so here this would be the product, the advertisement, or it could be, for example, in Look Between the Lines, Jim used 3 different ads, but he looked at one main theme. So he looked at stereotyping. It could be that theme. Either way, you've got to make sure that central thing is mentioned. You've got to have your thesis at the end of that first paragraph. Put it there. It's the answer to this question. What does this advertisement reveal about contemporary culture, value, goals, acceptable roles in society, etc.? So as you're finishing up your paper, come back to this and think about that. What is it that this is really showing the bigger picture, not just the one ad, right? Okay, so let's take a look at how Mauricio did this. They introduced the latest car, the newest gadget, and the most convenient service. Most people see hundreds of them every day, and millions of dollars are spent producing them. It's known as the dreaded commercial. Usually, viewers see commercials as minor annoyances, which interrupt their favorite TV shows. In Jesus is a Brand of Jeans, Kilborn points out that most people feel that advertising is not something to take seriously. Most viewers don't realize or acknowledge these annoyances. Actually, they do more than just annoy, but also reinforce society's stereotypes. Humor, sex, and fantasy are commonly used in advertisements to mask underlying fallacies that are implied. State Farm Insurance uses humor in the commercial State Farm's State of Disbelief French model to reinforce several stereotypes that exist in society. Blonde women are dumb and gullible, men are emotionless, and men believe they are superior to women. So Mauricio gets all of those parts in there, and we can see when we look at this that, he's also got a quote in there. So he starts out with ads, and of course, any of you could start out in your essay talking about advertising or commercials. He could have started off talking about stereotypes or fantasy or, how we like to see humor, how we're distracted by it on TV. Any of those things is fine, okay? And then he makes sure and he gets this quote in there because he's using that for context. Now, you won't always find a quote that's perfect for your commercial. Look for the big ideas, right? And you'll see a lot of these samples we've looked at, students use quotes in the introductions and conclusions. That's where your bigger ideas are. The body is those little things saying, here's what made me think the big idea, right? So that's where we've got the specifics that there are a lot of things in terms of the techniques there that you can use the quotes from those, like how to do this, the different effects that are used, that kind of thing. Those quotes fit really well in the body. And these kind of bigger quotes of the kind of bigger ideas, those fit better. You'll also notice when I read it, notice I didn't read Kilborn 2006 points out and the citations. You got to have those in, but you need to read your sentences without those because they need to make sense without them. Okay? And that also, if it's in parentheses, you should be able to take it out and read the sentence fine. If you take it out and your sentence doesn't make sense, then you're missing stuff, right? So get that stuff in there. So we have author date, boom, right? The minute you mention somebody and only last names, don't call them by their first name. That's hugely disrespectful. Don't do that, okay? Last name, date, the year, just like that. And then here, since this is a website and it's got sections, where is it at? There it is. Jesus is a brand of jeans. There's this section tuned in. And let me reset that bigger. Ooh. And so we can see here, when you scroll down again, I'll put a link at the end there's tuned in. You have to learn to look for, look, it's the same font kind of thing. It breaks it up. These are different section headings, okay? So you do that, and then you count, wherever whatever paragraph under the section heading. Obviously, if we had one in the first part where there's not a section heading, you would just have the paragraph number, okay? All right. Let me find this again. There we go. Okay. And then, of course, he makes sure and gives State Farm, and then definitely ends with the thesis. What is his main point? What are they selling? They're using humor to sell this stereotype. That's what it's doing, right? And so that's his overall thesis there. So let's move on to the next part, which is the description. And so for your description, fully describe that ad, okay? If you're using more than one ad, do that for each one. But they'll be, you'll do description and then analysis, description, analysis. So see fast food fat and a look between the lines, those samples for that. To cite audio video, you give the timestamp for location. A number of the samples may not be updated yet since APA just updated fairly recently, but you just give for when the quote began. And we'll look at that here. All right. State Farm's commercial begins with a man standing in front of his car using a smartphone. Then a woman enters the scene and says, "Oh, hey, what are you up to?" The man says, "Oh, just diagramming this accident with my State Farm Pocket Agent app." The woman responds, "I thought State Farm didn't have all those apps." Then the man asks, "Where'd you hear that?" The woman replies, "On the internet." The man says, "And you believed it?" The woman says, "Yeah, you can't put anything on the internet that isn't true." Then he replies, "Where'd you hear that?" Both say, "On the internet," together. The last scenes of the commercial are of the woman getting picked up by a man she met on the internet. She believes the second man is a French model because that's what he's falsely told the woman over the internet. A one-time viewing of this commercial, and the viewer is left with a humorous and innocent impression. Lopez, in his article, Advertising Analysis, notes that humor is often used because it makes us feel good and is more memorable. While humor in this ad does make it memorable, this commercial must be viewed thoughtfully and without bias to see its underlying stereotypes. So Mauricio gives us the description, and you see here, he gave like what was said. And remember, anytime you quote what's said or what's written on the screen, that's a quote. Put it in the quote marks, and you need to make sure you give the timestamp for that. Now, he only gives it at the end of this conversation because you're not going to give it just every back and forth, right? Here's the end. And one of the key things to remember, and especially if you're looking at, on YouTube, is click on the three dots here, right here, and you can open the transcript, and that will give you the timestamp. Now, his was easy because his was just the very start of it, so we get 0000. That's where it starts, okay? And you notice, too, that he has, like up here, he has State Farm 2012, because remember, when you give the author and you're fixing to give a quote, or in the case of your ad, a description, if you saw it, heard it, it was in the ad, and you can point and say, yeah, right there, see, that's kind of like a quote, so you want to make sure and cite, okay? So here he does that. And at the end here, and the rest of this is just kind of summary, so he doesn't have to give specific site. We're still aware it's State Farm. If you ever think your readers might not be clear that, oh, that's where it came from, put that citation in there. It's better to, cover your butt and do that. So, and then of course he cites Lopez, and so here's where he talks about one of those specific techniques, humor. And with Lopez, this is the year, and of course Lopez is a PDF, so we have the page number. Here's humor right there. That's where that quote, it's from page 2. Oh, look, it's on this website you've heard of before, right? And when you look at my website, oops, don't want to do that. When you look at my website, you see the word dot in there, so write out kelli.ninja. So that's how that works, okay? And that would be on the references page, okay? So far he's used Kilborn, and he's got the site for that, and this is actually this is old APA, so don't assume that these, like this retrieved from statement, that doesn't go there. This website is gone, so now it's not that. It's on my website, okay? This retrieved from doesn't go there, okay? So don't assume these samples are 100% correct, because a lot of them are old APA, okay? So double check with your sources. But so far, everything he's used, we've seen, so you've got to mention it in your paper so people know where you used it at, and quote and do that correctly. But then it's also cited both the shortcut in the paper and then on this references page right there, right, where we have all the information we need to go look at it. Okay, so he gave us the description, he gave us we got into it, he gave us his thesis, he gave us the description. Now we're like, okay, cool, you say it's using these stereotypes and they're kind of hidden and that's not good, and you told us what the commercial was like. Now explain, what was it about that commercial that made you think that? And here's where we go to those body paragraphs, and these body paragraphs are basically shampoo, rinse, repeat. They have the same ingredients, you just give another example. When you're writing and you need to make your paper longer and you don't want to just fill it with BS, because every reader, as Hemingway said, has a built-in BS detector, then give another example and do these things with these paragraphs. So in these body paragraphs, you need to have a clear topic sentence. What is your main point? You give the evidence, and then interpretation connection to your thesis. Remember, the evidence is, okay, that's from the ad, from something I read, that kind of thing. The interpretation connection is your thinking, your thoughts. Okay, so you got to get yourself in there. All right. Now remember, we're only using, you can't go do more research for this. Don't do that. If you're doing that, stop. You're working too hard. Quit it. Okay. Only the assigned readings are readings from the media analysis page and then your ad. Okay. All right. So here we go. When first analyzing this commercial, we see that it reinforces stereotypes that blonde women are dumb and gullible by using a blonde woman in their commercial and having her believe everything she hears on the internet. Blondes are often ridiculed for being easily fooled or impressed. Society has carried the stereotype that blonde women are airheads or not all there. In the commercial, the blonde woman believes the second man that enters the scene is a French model because he told her over the internet he was. She never once questions the validity of the French model's statement. She believes the man is a French model even when the French model meets the woman in person, and she can obviously see the man is neither French nor a model. Humor is used to reinforce the stereotype in the viewer's subconscious. This happens even if the viewer doesn't realize right away the woman is, in fact, a blonde. State Farm purposely used a blonde woman in their commercial to play into this stereotype that's well embedded into society. And you may kind of say, wait, did they purposely do that? But, I mean, let's face it, they cast people. People tried out for this. They picked the role, the look, the voice, everything they wanted. Even if they wanted that actress and they didn't want her to be blonde, they could have put a wig on her or dyed her hair, right? That maybe she wasn't blonde and they did that, right? So, they're really making choices. So he starts out and says, look, what's happening? And he says, look, it's reinforcing the stereotype. And this is kind of connection to society. So connection, interpretation can happen in different places, but you got to back it up instead of just saying they're doing this stereotype. He describes this point, right? So he's saying, he described the whole ad for us. So even if you haven't seen it, we have this overview. And then he says, at this one point here, this is where they're really doing that. And then that interpretation is, the fact that State Farm is using that and it connects to this, but we get this humor, so we may not even notice it. And it's really funny because this has been one of my favorite ads to look at for years and years before anyone even decided to do analysis of it. And when he did, it was hilarious because I had never really thought, oh, she's blonde. But it makes so much sense because she really is portrayed as the the internet said it. So it's this totally stereotypical thing. Well, okay, let's do that again because paper's not long enough, right? Upon further analysis of this commercial, it's obvious that State Farm is trying to reinforce another stereotype that is typical in society. Men have no emotions toward each other of the opposite sex. The first clue for the viewer is when the woman is telling the first man that she believes everything she hears. He has no response to her irrational statement except to simply be dismissive of her and to continue about his business. He shows no desire to politely educate the woman about her misdirected beliefs. The second bit of evidence comes from when the second man, or French model, enters the scene. The French model shows no regret or forgiveness about lying to the woman. In addition, the first man shows no interest in intervening in the French model's lie and is fine with allowing the woman to be lied to by another man. This commercial by State Farm uses body language and inaction to imply that men are emotionless. So, and it really is true because when you break this down and you think about this, it's kind of creepy. Here's this guy comes up and he says he's a French model and it's clear he's not. And if we think about this, I always loved it because it makes me laugh. I think this commercial is hilarious, but when I think about it, it's disturbing. Here's this dude saying he's one thing, but he's not, and this other guy's like, yeah, whatever, doesn't even worry about, look, he's lying to you, or this could be a dangerous situation. None of that, right? So, there he's using, again, he's, got this what's happening, and so this is another reason that he has drawn his conclusions, right? And then he gives examples from the ad, so he's using evidence. And then here, there's not a lot, so sometimes you'll have more. It's usually good to have more than one sentence, but, it's also about the big picture, right? If I told you have to have 2 sentences, sometimes you just need 1, sometimes you might need 4, right? Sometimes your evidence might be 1 sentence and you have 3 or 4 where you're discussing it. So that's why it's tricky, right? Okay. One more time. Finally, through thoughtful analysis, we were able to discover this commercial's deepest rooted social stereotype. Men feel superior to women. The male superiority stereotype encompasses the commercial as a whole. There are glimpses of the stereotype throughout the commercial. The first hint is in the first man's dismissiveness of the woman, as though he expected her gullible nature because she is a woman. Then the viewer sees that the French model has an unwavering confidence that his lie will be accepted without question because he is lying to a woman. When his lie is in fact accepted without question, then the commercial further portrays into the superior stereotype. Last, State Farm uses 2 men and 1 woman in this commercial to show subtly that men feel to be above women. Through much analysis, the viewer can discover this commercial's hidden overall message and stereotype, which is that men feel they are superior to women. And so while I've kind of color-coded and font-coded these as different things, the evidence and the connection here, you can see that, these are points in the commercial, but at the same time, what Mauricio is doing is, as he's saying here, he's also doing that interpretation. This is what this is. This is how we can see between the lines another message that's coming in through. Okay? So it's not always as clear cut as just here's evidence, here's that. It's often, comes together and is interwoven. And that's what's happening here. So I guess I should have done every other line a different color, but that would have been too much. All right, now we're going to wrap it up. You may do some summarizing, reviewing, or restating, but have at least one of these. Don't just tell people what you told them. That's the speech model. It's not a speech. People can flip back and see, right? What's the big so what? What does it add up to? So that's the first one. You can always ask yourself, so what? Who cares that there's an ad like this out here, or that there's other ones like it, that there's a bunch of them, that there's TV shows that do this too? What's the big deal, right? How does it show something about society or culture, values, assumptions, the bigger picture? Why does it matter? And that's where you want to just kind of kick back and say, okay, let me philosophize overall, right? You let your kick back, let your hair down and philosophize. Say, okay, so what is the big deal that, men, women, little girls, young boys, older people see this and accept these men as being examples of being men and what it should be like, and this woman as what it should be like to be women. Or, sometimes they'd show us what not to be like, whatever it is. So what's the big deal? Is there a problem with that? Is it good? Is it helpful? It can be. Or is it not so good, right? Does it create these stereotypes, these ideas that we just kind of buy into without even thinking about it? So let's see what Mauricio says. He says, now we're going to have to wait. Oh, please don't make us wait too long. Oh, I would pause, but if I pause, then my audio video sync goes off, and I am not recording this like a gazillionth time, okay? So let's just go here, check it out. Okay. The commercial concludes with "unbelievably mobile" in white letters on a red background. Humor is a tool that State Farm uses in its commercials very tactically. In particular, they use humor to hide stereotypes in commercials like State Farm's State of Disbelief French Model. It's not unbelievable that using a State Farm application can make life easier. It's unbelievable that the average person will never realize that commercials like the one by State Farm are reinforcing many of society's stereotypes day after day. Kilborn writes, "Some argue that advertising simply reflects societal values rather than affecting them. It may not be clear whether advertisers are influencing society or the other way around, but what can be said is viewers aren't unbelievably mobile, but unbelievably oblivious, and ads like this are a part of perpetuating stereotypes through subtle imagery and assumption." And that's how he wraps it up. So, that's kind of the bigger picture, right? Is that it's not just this State Farm ad, it's other ones as well. And it's these message we get, not through even what they say, but this kind of imagery and assumption that are built into these layers. And so, those are the big picture in terms of what his essay is saying overall. In the end, of course, you've got to have your references page, so you make sure and cite. If you mentioned it in the paper, it should be on this page, right? If you have it on this page, you should be able to find, somebody else should be able to find it in the paper. They need to find that author's name, that kind of thing. And remember that authors, like here, State Farm is an author. If you quote from the Media Literacy Project, that's the author's name, okay? So alphabetical, KLS, right? Whatever comes first, which will be the name, whether it's the author, person, or organization. We're going to have that hanging indent. It's always going to be a separate page. So once you're done with your paper, hit Control Enter, boom, put that in there. I suggest you do that already and start with references. This should be in bold. That's my fault, not Mauricio's. He actually did this in MLA, and that's one of the ways I learned APA was I changed all these MLA papers to APA, okay? So, and I had to look it up too. Remember, all of this stuff is just look it up, okay? So anyway, I hope that gives you just kind of a bigger picture of how this, what are the various parts of this essay and how you have to have them. So if you're struggling as we work toward, working on the essay itself, if you start struggling with any part, whether it is, whether it's the introduction, description, body paragraphs, conclusion, whatever. You can go to these paragraph breakdowns, have that in there, the paragraph breakdown. And so you can look at that. And then just open up 2 or 3 of the samples and just read. If you're working on your introduction, just read 2, 3, 4 introductions. Okay? And then write yours. Right? Just read 2 or 3, 4 descriptions, then write yours. 2 or 3, 4 body paragraphs from different essays, then write yours. Because there's variety in all of them, but they all have to have those common ingredients. Okay? And also remember that is, in writing down the basics, whenever you look at that argument section, except for the kind of what goes in with the, it doesn't want to load. There's an argument section, okay? Just look at argument. But also in the media analysis thing, looking at what goes into the grading, what's there. You've got to have description. You've got to have, clear points, which is going to be your topic sentences, your evidence, and your interpretation. Those are the 3 parts that go in there, okay, into your body, okay? So anyway, all right, I guess what I should just say is I hope that helped. Think about those parts as you read more samples, as you work on your paper. Look at those in others, and then notice them in other readings beyond this, because once you start to see them, you'll see them everywhere, a lot of different places in your history textbook and Newsweek and weird places like that. So anyway, so I hope that helped. I guess we will talk to you, see you, whatever, next time, sometime. Let me know if you have questions. And of course, as always, keep on keeping on.